Hi everyone. As some of you will be aware, I've been doing a recent project where I've been trying to review Great Debate G Plus and blog posts. Um, Now I found that to be interesting and I'm enjoying doing that. However, what I'm thinking about doing is revising the format of that. So rather than just like in the previous four that I put up, um, two reviews and two updates, rather than just looking at my fantastic um, emoticon um, of Nightmare on Callum Street. I want it to be more visual for you, and hopefully that'll make it more visual, more interesting, and more interactive in some way. So the new format's going to be, instead of just looking at that emoticon, you can actually, as I'm speaking, when we are doing the reviews, you can actually follow through what's happening on my screen as I'm doing that, and follow through with me. Um, so this here, as you can see on the screen here, this is my collection, review of Great Debate G Plus and G blog post. This is where all the stuff related to this project is going to go. There's number one updates, another update on a specific subject, and uh, number two. But in order to accommodate that new format, I want to do a transitional post, this one, before I do review number three with the new format, because one of my objectives is not to just mention a subject, then once I've mentioned it, just let it drop. If that topic is ongoing, if it's closed off, note note how it got closed off, and then that's it. But if it's ongoing, then I want to keep that going through, so there's some continuity um, in the subjects raised, and we can see how they develop, we can see how they evolve, and hopefully we can get to a conclusion for some of them. So, in order to accommodate both those objectives, the objective of the new format, and also to um, note when subjects are being closed off and open, this post is going to be just a review of the reviews. Basically, it's just going to quickly go through everything we've touched upon and note whether they're open, closed, how they got closed off if they're closed, and what's basically happening there. I'm not going to be going over every single individual issue again, because that would just be repetition and time consuming. If you want to, if you want to see what's been happening before, then the collection's a place to go. Just click through it. I'm trying to keep all of them below an hour, and I think I've been successful in that so far. Just go in here, and start with number one, update, number two, and you'll be bang up to date with where we are just now. So I'm not going, much as I want to, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on some of these, only giving relevant update information, not reviewing. So the first one we covered off there was a Matt Dillahunty dodge, um, on review number one. I thought that was going to just drop, because when I did the updates following posting one, it hadn't comments on it whatsoever. If you look at number two, it's not part of the subjects in number two, so I kind of thought dead issue. But what happened was, I had marked this, when I did one, I had marked this a separate project to look at the Matt Slick Dillahunty debate on his secular humanism superior to Christianity, where apparently Slick brought this nature of logic in again, and apparently Dillahunty dodged again, in inverted commas. So the whole objective for me was, what I wanted to understand was whether or not there was some sort of justification for referring to this as the Matt Dillahunty dodge. and for myself, and to suggest to others whether there's evidence that justifies that or not. So I went through a kind of I did a kind of examination of it. you can see all that. If you look in here, I've got a video where I do a talk on it, so a little talk, so on that there. But if you're interested more in text, then you can read it all. That's what happened, all the way down there, from that there. And just very brief summary. Well, first of all, my conclusion is that what I concluded was that the that I don't think there's a justification for speaking about the Matt Dillahunty dodge. I think that he doesn't dodge any more than any other weak atheist. There's an element of perceived dodging for any weak atheist, because by definition they're not taking a position, which is the very definition of the Dillahunty dodge by Matt Slick. But I noted that Dillahunty, well, he's got a long way to go before he becomes philosophically significant. That after reviewing the whole thing, that I don't believe there's a justification for referring to the Matt Dillahunty dodge. I think it'd be, if you were going to pick anyone, someone like Christopher Hitchens, who is a dodger, no doubt about that. Ducks, dives, dodges, weaves about, very poor debater, but from my evaluation, it's not true of Matt Slick any more than it would be true of other weak atheists. There's no specific reason to think that Matt Slick has justification for that, although I'm sure Matt Slick will disagree and maintain his position. So this position came about from discussions. So after I posted the history of the Dillahunty dodge, which is interesting in itself, I posted it here, got some comments there, got some comments here, one same here, but in this one here, 37 comments going through there. That was all, I was interacting with all of that kind of material. As well as that, Camille Gregor, he also reposted it in the Great Debate community, and there was about 25 posts in there, and I was interacting on there as well. The whole issue centered around whether or not Slick was saying there were only two options. I don't think he was. I think he actually identified a third option, and whether or not, what burden of evidence had Dillahunty has to name a third option. That's where it all centered around. So yeah, I mean, I think that, and I think now that Dillahunty in review would basically, he would name a third option, or maybe has, but yeah, no justification in my view for talking about the Dillahunty dodge. So that kind of closes off that subject, for me anyway, unless there's further information that comes to light, or further responses to this which are substantive in nature and cause me to revise that position. So that covers off the Dillahunty dodge. As I say, if you want to follow that through in more detail, then go to that collection and read it there on that. So Uriah Christian's argument for a necessary universe. This was an argument he had made. This was an argument that Uriah had made in the Skeptics Corner. A very good community to join. I recommend you join that community and participate if you want. But that's his argument there. On October 20th he posted that. So I had interaction with him on that, challenging premise 3, which misrepresents, in my view, the first law of thermodynamics and leads to some problems. But obviously Uriah never agreed with me on that. He took a different view that that wasn't the case. But so we had kind of a lot of interaction there. Foxon and O came in and he raised problems with it as well, basically about the ambiguity surrounding the word necessary, and how the argument doesn't capture the philosophical usages of that term and what would be required for Uriah to make this argument tighter. But even then his conclusion was, thus I think even if you clarify what you mean by necessity and settle on a weaker definition, it could still be objected to. So he raised objection there. I had raised objection previously about, before you can even talk about the first law of thermodynamics here, you need to have a system. Without a system you have no first law. So that was my issue with it. Both raised on the 21st, no response there from Christensen since then. But if you go back to the Dillahunty Dodge post, let's see. So when we were having this interaction on the Dillahunty Dodge, here, when we were talking about disjunctive syllogisms and dichotomies, or I was anyway, basically you get to the point where he says, oh, you just don't know logic type thing, you need to learn logic. I responded that yeah, I need to learn logic after refuting your previously attempted logical argument. And it's only then, this is in the 24th, 3 days after the objections raised by myself and Foxon and O, different objections by the way, although maybe slightly touching or crossing over on one area, we get this concession from Uriah. Actually, I didn't refute the argument. It was actually Foxon and O that refuted, and it was not refuted for any reason you gave. So that's a concession from Uriah that his argument has been refuted by Foxon and O. I think my my objection refuted it as well, but he disagrees. But who cares? It's he's gave up on the argument, or he'll be modifying that argument to something different, which will be interesting to see. It was an interesting discussion, but that's one that you can say is pretty much closed off, barring any further interactions. And again, you can follow through on that discussion. You can follow through that discussion by looking at the Skeptics Corner, which is a very good community. So that closes, that one's closed off as well. Provisionally, both these are closed off. Wayne Fillmore's failure to respond and Christian truth denying statements, that's pretty much closed off, as I covered in let's see, I think it was in updates number, yeah, in updates here. So I don't think it's mentioned in number 2. Yeah, it's not. So that if you read the updates there, you'll see what happened with that. Basically, Fillmore was putting out that all miracles were natural and the Bible is man-made, making an appeal to non-theists and unbelievers that that's his position as a Christian. I challenged that. He conceded that there's at least one miracle, which is the creation of the natural world. Obviously something the atheists would not accept. And I then went on to ask him about justifying natural processes for the resurrection. He appealed to the unknown, which fails by Occam's razor. And I also challenged him on the Bible being man-made, where I think he equivocated. And when the atheist says the Bible's man-made, he means completely a work of man, not a work of man inspired by God. Whereas Fillmore means written by men, physically written by men, but inspired by God, or God's involvement some way, which again is not the same as how atheists are referring to it, and he just stopped responding. It seems to be a kind of typical way of how he deals with questions that he can't answer or he's uncomfortable with. But whatever the case, that's also closed off. You can read that discussion in the Great Debate community. Join that good community. Lots of posts, or intermittent posts, but they're not like silly subjects, and they're usually substantive subjects when there are posts. You can follow that through there, or you can follow it through my profile, where I've got at least one thread. In fact, I've got 2 threads on that dealing with the Fillmore situation. So that's 3 possibly closed off. The last one I'm not going to touch on much. It was a failure by the list, the logically impaired scientific posse, including Steve McRae, to know about or challenge Hugh Ross's anti-evolution position. So there's been a big hoopla, and there's been a big song and dance made from that community, that group of people, with the success of the Fuzz Rana and Hugh Ross being in the hangout. But my point is, okay, that's fine, but what else do you expect when you don't challenge that which you would normally challenge, which is someone taking an anti-evolutionist stance, as I think is true of Fuzz Rana and Hugh Ross, who believe that all major life forms are the special creation of God at the Cambrian explosion. So I don't think that was. I think if you want to have I imagine a situation, if I was able to get William Lane Craig onto a hangout, and I got the best informed, philosophically informed atheists and theists on Google Plus, to join that hangout with a full panel, and we've got William Lane Craig in there, and we spent most of the discussion talking about non-issues that we agree on, like, oh, Calvinism's wrong, young earth creationism's silly. Well, of course, the reviews and follow-up from that discussion is going to be congenial, friendly discussion. It's all going to be positive, but that's only because there's not been any challenge put out there to the areas of contention. So that's in the Great Debate community. There's been the positive stuff there. You can see here, like, yeah, so Hugh Ross has done a video called Improbable Planet, and at the start of that he makes reference to the Great Debate community and how positive the discussion was, and you can also see that down here. Hugh Ross starts off in the video speaking about his interview. It was an example of having a generous dialogue with educated people from all over the world. So all positive stuff there from their perspective, from my perspective, just avoiding the areas of contention to get that outcome. But also a dead subject. It's not really relevant any longer. I think that one is dead. The other 3 might resurrect in some form or another, but those 3, that 4th one is dead. Don't need to worry about the reviews. Those take care of themselves until something comes up. I then did the update post. This one's covered off. There's an update, Uriah Wayne, McRae's Lisps. And then I did the update on Matt Dillahunty Dodge, which we've covered off. So that's all related to number 1. I then moved on to the review of Great Debate G+ and blog post 2. And subjects were the Ehrman versus Price debate, Xbox feeling Jesus' ontological contradiction, the Jade West pregnancy, rape and abortion. The reference to Ehrman versus Price debate, that's really basically, that was just highlighting, I think. You can see it's not a long discussion. It was just really highlighting that the debate had concluded, that happened in my community. The notification, that is not the debate. You can see here from there. So debate, Robert Price and Bart Ehrman, did Jesus exist? So that was posted in there, and I did mention it in my update that was a long anticipated debate. Previously I predicted that Ehrman might be a tight debate, and I actually predicted in Hangouts that basically I thought that Ehrman might become a mythicist, but after viewing that, I kind of retract that. I don't think that's the case at all, given the passion by which Ehrman was putting forward the historicity case and the lack of seriousness that seems to be prevalent and accepted by Price, for example, that mythicism is not a subject seriously considered in the academia on that there. But that was just a brief reference on that there to that debate. When I do review of Great Debate G+ blog post 3, I'll do some more stuff on that, but nothing really to talk about that. This one also is closed off, so this was a post that I commented on with respect to Jade West. Jade West is a theist. I think she's a theist. Yeah, she is a theist. I think she's a Roman Catholic, maybe. Don't quote me on that. But Jade had got a little bit upset. I think it was by a post from Antonio Fletcher relating to the subject of abortion in the case of rape. And let's just make sure I get it accurate. I don't want to. So again, I'd recommend Jade West, although she's one of the lists in my view. Some of the stuff she posts is quite interesting. You can spend an interesting hour. Wouldn't it be a waste of an hour to go through her profile and have a look at some of the stuff she posted, especially on the science. But what we're looking for is the post that upset her or disgusted her, to use her own, so I'm not putting stuff on her. Yeah, so here it is here, and you can see that there. This infuriates me, talking about rape and pregnancy. So she was talking about how the daily torture a woman who is pregnant by a rape can go through, having to carry the fetus, and apparently Fletcher's response was, this daily routine point of yours is stupid. I took issue with that. I don't think it is. I think it's in a situation where someone is conceived due to rape, that you're in a lesser of two evils situation, and it really becomes the decision of the female and her partner, if she has one, to come to a decision on whether to go through with the pregnancy or to terminate, because either way something evil happens, either with what Jade describes as the torture of the female, going through that, or the aborted fetus. I also touched on the morning after pill and such like, and things like that in that discussion. So I thought it was interesting, but it generated 0 comments. So because it generated 0 comments, then it's not really going to, I don't think that's going to be discussed much. So I skipped this one deliberately. This one is live. Xbox Fiend and Jesus Ontological Contradictions. This is the only one out of all the subjects there that I think is still ongoing. Let me get to the collection again, sorry. So, of all of those, you'll see a comment. Let's see, yeah, here. So, Xbox made a post. The post was basically trying to point out contradiction in the hypostatic union. If Jesus is God and human, then you got a contradiction because God cannot lie, but Jesus, if he was human, could lie. So you got a contradiction there. My initial response, I tried to give some sort of response to it by saying there's a deeper problem, and that's the coherency of the hypostatic union. That's something that theologians have to resolve. And basically saying, but if you grant the hypostatic union, then there are obviously some things that God can do that Jesus can't do as a human, just given the limitations. So the example I used is that in his divinity, Jesus is omnipresent as God. He's everywhere present. But in his humanity, he's limited to a physical place. So something is true about Jesus in his divinity that's not true of Jesus in his humanity. And you could take that across to the lie stuff. But what makes it more interesting, I think, is that Xbox made a fuller post, which is here, called "The Devil is in the Details," where you can see there, he lays out contradiction 1, God can't lie, Jesus is God, Jesus can't lie, man can lie, Jesus is 100% man, Jesus can lie, and then contradiction 2 here, and then interacting with some of that there. Also very interesting, 41 comments, so quite an involved, lengthy, interesting discussion that happened there that I think deserves more attention than it's got on the community. So I intend to make that a video response in itself, just to go through this argument here. Although I think Xbox and I are going to discuss it in a hangout as well at some point, but when I get the time, I'm going to go through that and give my thoughts on that here and the comments as well. So that's quite an interesting subject. If you're theologically inclined, well, you go to Xbox's profile, you'll see that argument there. The devil is in the details, and follow it through, and also the discussion there. So that one's very much open. It's quite involved. So one of the better discussions that I've seen in recent days that have taken place on G+. So that remains open, not closed. So that kind of concludes it. I'm really pleased that I've got through that in under 30 minutes so far. That kind of concludes this transitional review. So from how many subjects? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So from 7 subjects, it looks to me as if only one of those subjects remain open. This one here, but obviously I'll also be touching on the Ehrman Price debate, giving my analysis of that in Great Debate Review number 3. So thanks very much for listening. I hope this new format, I think it'll be even more interesting when I'm going through my profile and websites and blogs, and it'll be far more interesting, I think. But this is the transitional post I'm going to make, just updating on all the previous discussions and subjects, and very briefly, and also outlining that new format. One more time, if you want to view any of those subjects, the best place to do it in more detail is in my collection on my G+ profile, Review of Great Debate G+ and Blog Post Project. Number 1 updates, Dillahunty Dodge update, and number 2 on that there. Okay, so thanks very much for your attention. Appreciate all comments, any suggestions, any comments you want to make, fire them in, and catch you in number 3.